Thank you for all gathering here today for the opening of our photo exhibition. It's also the launch of our campaign Together for Water. And for tonight, we are proud to welcome Her Excellency Marie Fontanelle, Ambassador of France to the Philippines, whose presence tonight reflects the long-standing support of the French Embassy for the Inclusive Development and Civil Society Initiative. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Good evening, everyone. This is a blue atmosphere, perfect for the matter we have to discuss tonight and for this beautiful exhibition. Perfect also because you know that we had this great conference in Nice last week, the United Nations Conference on Oceans, and here in Manila we have launched last year a Blue Nations initiative, France and the Philippines partners for the oceans. So blue is our color. Thank you for Xavier for the perfect color tonight. Dear friends, I am very happy to officially open the new edition of the annual Together for Water Awareness campaign with this beautiful exhibition hosted at the Alliance Française de Mali. I had the chance already to look at the beautiful pictures. It's impressive what they are, the power of these pictures and what they are telling us. Better with Water is no ordinary NGO. Since 2009, and over the past years, Better with Water has grown into a pioneering model of resilience building. Thanks to the strong social impact of its work and its renowned expertise, it has become a reference in the field of access to water, particularly for the most disadvantaged persons living in informal settlements close to urban areas. Better with Water is also an example for developing a hybrid economic model that allows its activities to be not only socially impactful but also economically viable, successfully addressing the major challenges of financial sustainability in the non-profit sector. As of today, Better with Water provides water at home to more than 13,500 households. Is that correct? Which means around 60,000 individuals, and operates in 25 communities across 4 cities, improving the living conditions of over 120,000 people. Am I right? Correct numbers? Or you have an assessment at the end of the exhibition to know if you also learned those numbers like I have today. This year, Better with Water enters a new phase of development. The NGO will be expanding activities to new countries at international level, as well as opening a new branch in the Philippines, in the north of Manila. Thanks to the support of Agence Française de Développement, present of course here with me tonight, Bénédicte, they will also integrate new services, including disaster risk reduction and civic participation, especially for women and marginalized communities. And I know that Bénédicte will also talk about it a bit later. This new phase also means improving service quality in existing areas of intervention. And because its actions are proven so efficient and have created systemic changes, Better with Water will also be able to progressively disengage in mature areas, where empowered local communities have been able to take over ownership and autonomy where systems are strong, which means this is the success of the model by intended development. The exhibition tonight aims to reflect this evolution with the objectives of raising awareness, of course, of water access challenges, encourage collaboration between public, private, civil society actors around the issues of water justice, strengthen partnerships, both existing and new, and showcase impact through stories that the pictures are telling, I must say. Through those stories, those visuals and meaningful exchanges. France is proud to support Better with Water through AFD, Agence Française de Développement, France Volontaire, and the French Chamber of Commerce in the Philippines, the CCI France Philippines, and its foundation, the France Philippines United Action. Access to clean water is not only a basic need, it is a right, a human right. So let us continue to act together for water. Thank you so much for listening to me, and please enjoy the night, this beautiful exhibition. Try to find the better picture, the better photograph that is the most telling. We can launch this competition maybe tonight. What would be the more telling pictures? It will be a very difficult choice because they are all beautiful, and congratulations to the photographers. To the photographer I had a chance to meet earlier. He's hiding somewhere. Congratulations to you. Thank you very much for making it possible to be all together tonight. Thank you, Madame Salamato.
Thank you so much for this welcoming words. And now we can welcome the country director of Better with Water, Adrien Despierres.
Thank you. Good evening. Her Excellency the Ambassador of France to the Philippines, nice to meet you. Representative of the diplomatic community, partners from the water and development sectors, dear colleagues, friends, ladies and gentlemen. So I'm Adrien, I'm the country director for Better with Water in the Philippines, and I'm truly honored tonight to welcome you for the opening of our photo exhibition Together with Water, for water, here at the Alliance Française of Manila. So thanks for opening your door to us tonight. And thanks all of you for being here. Your presence shows that water matters. So this exhibition is part of our annual Together for Water campaign, created to raise a simple, powerful question, which is, where do we stand on the Sustainable Development Goal number 6? This goal mentioned that to achieve by 2030 universal and equitable access to safe and affordable drinking water for all. But here's the reality. The reality is, according to the World Bank, by 2030, 30 million Filipinos will still need access to safe water. And according to UN Habitat, by 2030 again, 10 million households could still be living in informal settlements. So I'm asking again, where do we stand? And what are we doing about it? So that's the purpose of Better with Water. We are last mile water operator, and we work where others don't, or don't even think about it, because it's supposed to be too complex, too costly, and even too risky for some. But at Better with Water, we work in urban slums and informal settlements. So to do so, we offer partnership to traditional water operators, stepping in where legal, technical, or financial constraints prevent them from connecting to the forest. Since 2019, we've been developing a model that works today. We are now improving conditions for over 120,000 people in 25 different communities across 4 cities in 3 different islands. And we are ready to scale up to reach more families with safe water. We are ready to scale up to expand services, sanitation, waste water collection, solid waste collection, hygiene, firefighting, and also to support stronger, more and more resilient urban communities. So tonight, we are proud to show that how this work looks like through the lens of Linus Eskander, who is a Filipino photojournalist who followed our team and the people we serve for some days. His photographs capture the struggle and challenges, of course, but also the strengths, the hope and dignity. So I'm sure you will feel that, and you will feel this is not just a photography exhibit, and actually it's also a call to action. So how can you act? So actually all the photos are available through Silent Auction.
Artists are weird people. Your subject, without requiring people to feel the image. That's what I like. Yeah, I like the first part, taking pictures. These are a group of images. Anyway. I'm sorry. It turns out we just let the words. I can't understand the words, but I can understand the picture. That's
Thank you, Luis. And now, to close this series of reflection, please welcome Dondi Alipala, chairman of our NGO arm and a strong voice for structural change in the water sector, who will talk about the gender lens on water access.
First they asked me to speak about, I had to take a picture, and what struck me most was, actually, believe it or not, most of the pictures are of women. And I said, let's talk about women. And when I was thinking about what to say, I remember this water forum I went to years ago in Malaysia, and we were discussing something called the Dublin Principles. And in the Dublin Principles, talks about how the ban from the water center, and it talks about how women should play a role in water management. And I was smart. I was telling, in the Philippines, we value our women, and in Southeast Asia, we're number one when it comes to gender equality. I said, we don't have that same problem as Africa and other countries when it comes to water and women. But in that particular forum, somebody went up on stage and he talked about a poor community and where the people in that community had no water and they had to cross the street. It's actually a highway because the well was on the other side of the highway. And just by providing water to that community, they avoid, we hear, how water connects to the SDGs and stuff. But by putting, they avoided people, children, from getting hurt by cars. Just by bringing that water across the street, children were not anymore risking their lives. Such a simple move. And it struck me that when you look at all these pictures here, these are the fortunate ones in the Philippines because they have water. In 2020, when we were telling people to wash your hands, saying happy birthday twice when you wash your hands, but don't leave the house, 50 million people had no water. And this was at the peak of COVID. This is exactly about 5 years ago. And where did they get their water? This is one of the few communities where in impoverished areas, people actually have water connections. Most of the other areas are communal wells. And if you read the stories of Vanessa, and April, they talk about what it was like before they had water. What it was like when they had to pay 5 pesos for a bucket of water. Now the people who live in this neighborhood, this is they pay about maybe 40 pesos, 25 pesos per cubic meter. The person who had to pay 5 pesos for a bucket was paying the equivalent of 250 pesos per cubic meter for unsafe water. So when you look at, I just want to invite you to look at all these pictures and listen to the stories of the women. Because I was wrong. The women have an important role to play. Most of the stories here are about women. It's about empowering women. It's about empowering communities. We're going to hear about the SDGs and about how if we provide water, we're able to address mortality, and productivity, and education. All of that they're fine. But you won't see the stories behind each picture. And that's what I want to invite you to listen and look at the stories of the women behind each picture. And perhaps beyond each picture, listen to the stories and find out the stories about not stories for each picture, but the stories for each tap. The stories behind each faucet. Because that's where you see the impact, not in SDG numbers, but in the stories. With that, thank you very much for joining us this evening.
Okay, thank you everyone for coming tonight. It means a lot for us. Thank you for staying until the end. Thank you to all of our speakers who helped us to raise awareness on water access, and to all of our partners for this event. Thank you.
must be developed with communities. For them, local knowledge must guide implementation, ensuring systems are maintained by those who depend on them daily. The economic argument is compelling. Every dollar invested in water and sanitation returns approximately $4 in reduced healthcare costs and increased productivity. For remote coastal communities, this investment transforms not just water security, but creates pathways to sustainable development across all sectors and providing hope of life. As we look towards 2030, our commitment must extend beyond our corporate social responsibility. As a company and urban centers to these remote coastal regions, we must invest in research for more efficient, affordable desalination technologies. We must develop financing mechanisms that make this system accessible to the poorest communities. And we must build capacity for local maintenance and operation. The challenge of providing fresh water from seawater in remote areas is not merely a technical. It requires political will, financial commitment, and recognition that no community is too remote, too small, or too difficult to reach in our pursuit of water justice. It is sad to hear, based on the reality videos I watched over YouTube by one of the Filipino bloggers, that one of the islands in the Philippines was left abandoned by its community because of lack of resources and water. The one was left were the animals. And today, I ask each and every one of us if this Filipino blogger was able to do this part to showcase or inform the public on what is happening in one of the islands in his simple means. What will be our action and commitment to help? In the Philippines alone, coastal communities in the Philippines is heavily relying on seawater for drinking. Several coastal and island communities in the Philippines have traditionally faced severe water scarcity. Despite being surrounded by seawater, best example are Bangsamoro, Autonomous Regions, Concepcion, Iloilo, Dinagat Islands, and a lot more. Those projects align with Sustainable Development Goal 6, ensuring access to water and sanitation for all, and are having clean water resources. But how about the small communities? If there is no political will or if there is no financial commitment, how? The answer lies in our hand as leaders and in this community. If we work together hand in hand in our small and little way, it will a ripple effect to the government and other industry leaders. Then we succeed. We will have transformed one of nature's oldest paradox, being surrounded by water yet dying of thirst, into a testament of human ingenuity and compassion. In Grundfos, we emphasize the technological innovation is central to solving global water challenge by, first, energy-efficient pump technology that reduces both water and energy consumption. Second is smart water solutions that help utilities and industries monitor and optimize water use. And third is water reuse system that supports circular water management, especially in water scarce. In 2024 alone, Grundfos enabled end users to save 1.5 cubic metric tons of water and provided access to clean water for 7.2 million people. Grundfos cannot do this alone, but we can do it all together. Let us commit today to ensuring that by 2030, no coastal community will look out at the vast ocean and wonder why they remain thirsty. Instead, they will harness the same ocean as a source of life, health, and prosperity. Again, thank you and good evening.
Thank you so much, Karen, for this impactful speech. So now we'll go on our almost last speaker, but just before that, I would just like to remind you that we have a silent auction occurring tonight, and maybe you also know people who would like to have this beautiful photography in their house or elsewhere. So you can put your little ticket in the blue jar that are on the table. And now, please welcome Linus Escandor, whose name brings us all closer to the people we serve tonight. He will explain his photography approach to represent harsh social realities.
I like the image. They have cats. I rescued them from the streets of Manila since 2018. Whenever I have assignments, I have this one, on the images. Each of the image connected to each other. It's telling stories. This one is unique. For me, this is special. This is special. But still, there's that connection. Why? Because of the volunteer. It is not a standalone image. That's the story. There's that connection. You can see the volunteer wearing blue uniform. This is blue. There's that connection. So there's that you share telling something. Now, as a journalist and working with that photographer, it is an honor for me to work I'm not a good speaker because I am always behind the camera. So it's difficult for me to explain. So yeah. I cover a lot in my lifetime. There's a lot of stories. And it's my advocacy to represent the voiceless, these people. They don't have a voice. So how am I going to help through my pictures? I have to tell their stories. Because for me, my advocacy is to work with people, organizations, like AFD, like the water, so that their struggle will be heard around the world. You know, these people need help. So as a motivator, I tell stories. So I am the voice of this. That's for resident individuals. And you know, photography is not only seeing, it's not only the visible. It's seen deeply. It's about feeling. How can you let other people feel your image if you don't have any connection? Yeah. So that's very important for me as a photographer. I am not after words, after those things. When people say that they feel something about the picture, and it's everything. It's better than words. It's better than words. That's my
Foundation, who has supported us since 2021 and continues to invest in our growth and impact. Thank you.
Okay, so this is the picture that I chose. Let me start my moment. So a few moments back, I had a chance to travel to Cebu. I have learned that one of the luxury hotel and other known resorts in the Philippines have implemented desalination technology as part of their commitment to sustainability while ensuring guests have access to clean drinking water in locations where fresh water resources are limited. And a few weeks back, I was invited to reflective speech about water sanitation for all. And this image made me realize how lucky these communities if they have the same water treatment facilities as luxurious hotels. Good evening, and ladies and gentlemen, this is Karen from Grundfos. As we stand here tonight, 5 years away from 2030, I would like to invite you to take a moment to reflect on the image. Behind me, it is not just a photograph. It's a mirror that reflects both the progress we've made and the distance we still need to travel to achieve SDG 6, clean water and sanitation for all. Today, I want to speak about a reality faced by millions living in remote coastal regions around our world, and especially in the Philippines. While surrounded by vast ocean, people would think that they are so lucky to have a beautiful beaches, but they paradoxically don't know how these island communities suffer from one of humanity's most pressing challenges, the lack of fresh, clean water. The ocean's bounty remains tantalizingly close yet inaccessible. A cruel irony where communities are surrounded by water they cannot drink. This is where our commitment to sustainable development, Goal 6, ensuring access to water and sanitation for all, faces one of its most unique challenges. Remote coastal communities often exist in state of water poverty. Despite being water-rich, they represent the approximately 2.2 billion people worldwide who still lack access to safely managed drinking water. For this community, the sea is both lifeline and barrier, providing livelihoods through fishing while simultaneously presenting a water security challenge that traditionally infrastructure struggle to address. The solution lies not in massive pipeline, stretching hundreds of miles or expensive water shipments, but in empowering these communities with appropriate technology and knowledge. Small-scale solar desalination system represent a revolutionary approach, turning the very obstacle of seawater into an opportunity for self-sufficiency. These technologies are not merely about providing water. They represent dignity, health, and opportunity. When a coastal village installed its first solar desalination unit, children no longer miss school to collect water. Waterborne disease decline, and women who disproportionately bear the burden of water collection gain precious hours of education, income generation, and community leadership. We must approach this challenge with both urgency and cultural sensitivity. Solution
speakers spoke with a lot of structure and passion about water. I'm not a specialist of water. I am a professional of development, and what AFD do around the world is a lot of different things, but we have a specific window for financing NGOs, and in the Philippines we finance quite a lot of different activities. So I arrived here in the Philippines 3 years ago now, in 22, and one of our first field visits was to visit installation of there was water in Cavite. So what struck me was the firefighters, the fire brigade. It was the first time that I realized that for a family, for a household living in very difficult conditions, with no access to water, with difficulty of transport to have water, well, fire is the first of the hazard that the community can suffer from. So we visited the project, and we got to meet a brigade of lady firefighters, and I was very impressed. I had the chance to visit the project 2 years after, so I could do the before and after, and the job was impressive. A second point that I wanted to say is that I am happy that the Better Water initiative and truly specific approach to bringing water to the households, and not only in the areas in the neighborhood, but directly in the homes, each household that they are giving service to. So I'm happy that this approach can inspire also big companies, big service, water service providers, and also ADB. We saw Alain a few minutes ago explaining that this approach is interesting, that it means a lot of things from Kenya, but it can inspire also ADB and in many other countries in Asia. My last point, is that I am very happy to see the work of Linus Mascano. We traveled together throughout the Philippines, from Cebu, Iloilo, I don't remember where, and he took a lot of pictures of our NGO projects, and I'm very happy to recognize his work, which is, for me, dramatic. There is something, there is a tension, there is a contrast, there is also a lot of joy and a lot of hope. So congrats Linus, he is having somewhere in Beijing. But well done, congrats, and I'm really very happy to see everything here. I forgot completely to say that why firefighters, it's because we work a lot in the Philippines also at government level on policy reform for disaster risk management. So at national level, we think about hurricanes, we think about seismic activity, but on the ground for some very small households, what is the most threat is fire. So congrats, Better with Water. Merci.
Thank you so much for this work. And now we can move on this side and listen to Marie Leclerc, in charge of grant management and project development at Actes Philippines, a humanitarian organization with a strong WASH track record, who will share how emergency intervention can restore access to essential services in crisis-affected areas, ensuring dignity, resilience, and that no one is left behind.
Thank you. So after this quite lengthy introduction, thank you for Better with Water inviting Actes to be part of this discussion and showcasing the struggle and still the road to a sustainable development goals, especially in the Philippines. I chose this picture not because of what we can see, but because of what we cannot. And what is missing on this picture is an adult. What we only see here is a child helping another child to, I think, wash her hands and properly wash her hands. So at Acted, we work to deliver assistance to the last mile and to go especially in hard-to-reach area and disaster-affected area. We all know the Philippines is unfortunately very prone to disasters. We've got lots of typhoons, earthquakes, floods, sometimes river conflict disputes, and all of this impacts the access to safe water, drinking water, hand washing, and hygiene in general. So ever since we came here in the Philippines in 2012 after Typhoon Haiyan, we've worked to promote and emphasize access to water, both through a humanitarian lens, so more court-term, short-term approach. So disaster hits, we look at what is lacking and provide assistance, but always engaging the community, because what we believe is you cannot provide durable and sustainable assistance to a community if you do not involve them. So after the humanitarian and when disaster struck, we also work actually with the support of UNICEF to help and develop resilience, climate resilience, especially regarding water, hygiene and sanitation, wash, as well as the acronym. And I chose specifically this picture because of a little anecdote. Last year, we visited this school that we helped through another project, and we found that it's actually a global approach, but what works well for children is actually when they teach other children. So the way we try to approach this, and a lot of other actors I'm sure they are doing the same, is forming some patrols. So we take some kids, I mean they're willing, but they go into this little patrol, and we teach them how to properly wash their hands, how to properly brush their teeth, and after they are the ones who go within their classroom to cascade their learning. And I think the last point is, when I went to this school and I was asking some kids that were about to graduate and they were going to leave their school, and I was asking, but how do you make sure that kids after you leave are going to continue washing their hands? And they say, oh, it's easy, it's because we made a song. And so after they started singing the song, actually it was quite long, but they've got short refrains, and all of the kids in the school know the songs, and they started, they're like, oh, yeah, we wash our hands before the toilet, before eating, before after the toilet. And I think this picture, aside from being really beautiful and the rest of the exhibition, it really shows that we need to involve the community if we want to achieve sustainable goals. Thank you.
And now we will have other highlights during the evening.
voices who are closely engaged in the field and in development cooperation. So first, Benedict Gazon, country coordinator of AFD, who represents a donor that not only funds us, but challenges us to think long-term and think
agents of change. When they do in the instance of hand washing, they're the ones that can influence their peers, raise their expectation to wash their hands. But at the same time, what this picture says is that there's a need to enable the opportunity of every child to practice hand washing. There has to be more hand washing facilities anywhere where kids are, where they need to wash their hands. To be able to practice, to be able to acquire the habit of hand washing, they need to acquire the skill. It needs practice. You can't practice without being able to do this where you need this to do. There has to be time, there has to be soap, and there has to be as many hand washing facilities with running water in order for these kids to have, all kids to have the chance to wash their hands. And at the same time, since kids already know how to wash their hands, they need to be nudged, not impeded. Nudge meaning, first nudge is that hand washing facilities, wherever they are, need to be in safe spaces. They cannot be hand washing facilities, water points cannot be somewhere remote in any compound. We often see these things in schools, somewhere at the back, somewhere down the farthest part of the school. This cannot be. And it has to be in an attractive space, and you need, by our research, visual cues to prompt these kids to to wash their hands. Such as what? Footsteps that lead from the toilet to the hand washing facility is an example. But most importantly, what is needed is availability of water. And here I would like to particularly point out that a question about whether should it be in terms of quantity or quality. For areas or for purposes of where you have limited resources, quantity has to be the primary priority. Why? Because of the social and public health benefits. Primarily, having enough water allows people to engage in economic activities. It frees up particularly women from their domestic chores and be able to engage in public and economic activities. And at the same time, its impact on the benefits of hygiene in particular and its preventive benefits. There is a need for solutions for water supply, especially in this situation of climate change. We need climate resilient water supply, and I would particularly like to make a pitch for rainwater catchment in schools, in healthcare facilities, and elsewhere where this is needed, in a country where it trades for that most of the time. And then there are other solutions such as solar water pumps. I saw a sign there by Groundfuss. Groundfuss, I'm not endorsing, but we have actually the technology already for solar water pumps. And at the same time, of course, it's already been pointed out by two speakers, there is a need for community, particularly local government accountability, especially for taking accountability for hand washing, water, and sanitation in schools, learning centers, where local governments do not normally have any say in running due to its being covered by that method. But there is really need, as pointed out, for community and local government participation, even actually responsibility over providing water, sanitation, hygiene for children. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We can now all go back to our chit-chat, and we have all other highlights during the evening. Thank you.
daily uncertainty about health, safety, and one of life's most basic needs, which is water, or clean water. The dirty stream, the unstable housing, the absence of proper sanitation, this isn't just a housing or an infrastructure problem. This is about dignity and survival. At the most basic level, water is essential for life, for without it, people cannot cook, clean, grow food, or maintain hygiene. A lack of water endangers health, spreads disease, and often leads to premature death of the most vulnerable, like children, the elderly, and those who are marginalized. As they say, humans can survive for several weeks without food, but without water, only for 3 days. To get a water connection from Maynilad, or from any water service provider for that matter, there are some requirements. One of these requirements is a proof of ownership of property, which the communities in settlements such as this do not have, right? Who would have a land title to this? It's not even a land, right? So this is a challenge a number of people are surrounded with in communities such as this. But with our partner, Better with Water, we are able to provide water to these communities. As a process, Better with Water looks for communities. In this situation, we talk to Maynilad for the prospect of giving them bulk water. By having a bulk water supply, we mean having another meter that Better with Water can connect to, and once connected, they take care of the distribution to these lighted communities. At present, we have a total of 2,100 connections with this setup, or an average of 8,400 people having access to clean water. While this setup requires the approval of our regulator, this still gives hope that communities who don't have the requirement of proof of ownership of the property will still be able to have clean, potable water, and that is through the partnership of Maynilad and Better with Better. So we're very happy for this partnership, which has been going on for more than 10 years already now. We hope to continue with the partnership, and we thank you for this opportunity to share what we do in Maynilad with this group of people. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. And now, please can we all listen? Excuse me, everyone. Excuse me. Can we all now listen to John Michael Villaseñor from the WASH program of UNICEF, who will share a perspective on their role in ensuring that efforts in water, sanitation and hygiene are relevant, aligned with national priorities and impactful. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Before I start, I'd like to invite everyone to come closer and take a particular look at this picture, because it's the first one you actually encounter where you really see a human face. And the most important thing actually for all of this that we're doing is the human person. So it's the human face that I'd like to particularly focus in this particular picture. So if you're looking at the picture now, the image just strike or jump at you or maybe the following for me, sir. We have a little girl there who's washing her hands. She looks anxious, or maybe she even looks maybe excited, depending on how, what perspective you're taking it. Then it may not be as obvious, but if you may be the center of the picture, but you actually see an adult assisting her. Then you see a group of kids who are seemingly equally eager to wash their hands as well. And then at the center of it actually is a single lavatory. I assume this is a hand washing facility, lavatory. Now, what are the realities that these images reflect to us? And I would really be thankful to the first two speakers actually for having spoken much of the broader context of where it's coming from. So you see a little girl who's washing her hands as an individual, because hand washing is actually an individual act. But as you I think we realize, hand washing, particularly for us, for many of us, hand washing is actually a normative behavior, meaning it happens in groups. Because in most cases, we wash our hands for certain group behaviors, such as before eating, particularly. Forget about the others about washing your hands after using the toilet, but particularly before eating. What also reflects is that you see a single hand washing facility for a group of people, only a group of kids. And that reflects the limited access to hand washing facilities, whether in the communities, in the homes, or particularly in schools and learning centers, or even in our health centers. What this shows is that if you will look, you have the single girl in there, and you have several of them kids who at the time would not have actually, if this thing takes longer, would no longer have the chance to wash their hands. Also, we see that for most of you who are in the development where you must have been this adult at some time. You must have been the person who was an adult thought that while you were doing this demonstration of hand washing, as an adult, I can be the
I can be the one to lecture, I can be the one to teach these children how to wash their hands. As if we adults have like the primacy of knowledge on hand washing. But as you may see, in reality, parents are not even teaching their hands till they children to wash their hands. And in school, teachers are teaching their kids to wash their hands mainly through lectures. But what is it that's not being done here? You have a single girl washing her hands, you have the rest of them just watching. They may not have the opportunity to wash their hands. But research would show, actually, and it's been, I don't know if this will surprise you, kids, by the time they reach primary grades, actually know how and when to wash their hands. They do not need any more teaching, they do not need any more guiding, actually. But why is it that they're not washing their hands? Our research showed that they simply forget. They simply say, I forget. Mainly, actually, from our observation, they forget because of adults. Imagine in a classroom where you have a child going to the toilet. After he or she uses the toilet, he or she is in a hurry to go back to his or her seat without having washed her hands or his hands in the lavatory. Why? Because the little child is afraid the teacher would just want him or her to hurry up and not tally going back to his or her seat. At home, when are the kids able to wash their hands? They forget because adults hurry them up. Faster! We're going to have to do something. What message does that give to a child if you have to hurry a child to wash his or her hand? That hand washing is not important. That it is something that you can just readily do without any care. In fact, in reality, it is us adults that actually hinder such behavior. Now, what directions then therefore this picture gives us given these realities? One is that raises the question, where can this scene best actually be exercised? Yes, maybe in the community, yes, maybe in the home, but where is the best place for this to happen? In school, where kids are for like 8 to 12 hours of the day, where kids are with their peers alongside each other, doing things as groups. However, we have to realize that it has to be kids that need to lead kids. For us in UNICEF, we believe that children are
which will share the reflection on the image that spoke to them personally. First, Marie-Antoinette H. D. Ocampo, Vice President for Corporate Affairs and Communication of Manila Water Services, our operational partner in Cavite, who now support our development effort in North Manila. For complementary action is essential in areas where they cannot extend their network due to legal or technical barriers. The partnership with Better We Water helps them make inclusive service delivery a reality.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. I'm not French, only my name is. Yeah, so very recently, you must have heard about the Philippine President Bongbong Marcos visited the public schools in Bulacan, and to his disappointment, there was no water in the toilets of that particular school. And the reason for the no water of that school is that their pipes were damaged. So because of that, in the order of the president, the repair of the damaged pipes were done very quickly. So that's an example of the school not having water for that reason of damaged pipes. Now I want you to take a moment to look at the photo that I chose for us, this image behind me. This image shows a reality for far too many people here in the Philippines. In the area in Metro Manila that's being served by Manila, this particular example, this photo was in Las Piñas, which is also an area of Manila. Yes, you are seeing a cluster of homes built on the edge of a waterway. You're looking at families.
leaflet. We call it How Can I Champion Water Access? And it's full of ideas to get involved and help build more inclusive cities. So let's fill the bucket. And let's fill it because water is not a luxury, it's a right and a shared responsibility as well. Now I'm inviting you to have a drink and to enjoy the exhibition. And during the evening we will have a number of speakers. They will take the floor and each one has selected a photography that inspired them. And they will share personal reflection or experience related to that picture. So thank you all for standing with us, and a special thank to AFD for supporting the Together for Water campaign, and to Pluxee as well for the support in making this event possible. And now I will give the floor to the first speaker. So it's supposed to be Mr. Alain Morel from Asian Development Bank. Please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. So, I have the honor of being the first speaker, so you can come and see the picture I picked, which is the smallest. It is this picture here. And so maybe I should introduce myself first. I'm Alain Morel. I work for the Asian Development Bank in the Water Group, and we thank. I have to thank Agathe who invited me to pick a picture and comment. So I picked that picture, but on the website it was not that clear. So I was wondering what it is about, and it reminded me a meter chamber, and it reminded me some work we developed in 2005, 20 years ago in Kenya, when I was working for the Water and Sanitation Program. And it sounds incredible, but it's the truth. We developed a system that is now being continued by Better with Water. So here on this picture you can see equipment, you can see pipes, you can see meters, you can see what could be a utility or water company employee diligently doing his job of maintaining the system. But accessing or providing water supply is not only about pipe and meters. It requires much more efforts, and I would like to explain a little bit what we did with the water company in Kisumu, in Kenya, with the water company is named Kiwasco. And so it takes a lot of effort to bring water and develop services in informal settlements. The first one is to reconcile divergent interests. The water company is targeting revenue generation. They want to reduce non-revenue water. They want to standardize the process, and providing services in informal settlement is a real challenge. On the other side, you have private, small-scale private operators who are driven by profit and sustaining business in an informal environment. And then you have the residents, the households, who want to sustain, water supply and have access to good quality water. And then you have also the authorities, the institutional setup, the regulators who want to, implement policies. So you need to really align, understand and align the divergent interests. Then it's also about trust, building trust. Residents in informal settlements, often they are very skeptical about any initiative coming from outside, and they are they have witnessed a number of failed initiatives often, and likewise the water utility is also very skeptical about the goodwill of private operators. So it requires a lot of effort to bring people together and start to establish relationship, agreements, and make sure they can work together. Then there is the need to build communication channels all along the line between the board of directors of the water company until the resident or the household consumer in the informal settlement. So it's really challenging to have all the different groups of people understand the model and understand how it works, how it operates, and how people how they can participate and make the system work. So with the different background, the different culture, the different skills. So there is need also to build capacity at all levels, starting with, for example, what we call the master operators. So maybe I missed to explain that the system that is developed is connecting the water utility with a master operator that is buying the water in bulk and managing the service in the informal settlement, and entering contract with the households. So there is need to build capacity of all, starting with the master operators who know very well how to operate in informal setup, but lacks, skills in terms of operating a formal business, technical skills on operating the system, and likewise, there is need to build the capacities of the water company as well, who is switching from operating directly the service to managing partnerships, selling water in bulk, providing support, technical support to master operators. Then there is need to build the skills also of the communities to provide feedback all along the chain. So it's really a work that is building trust, confidence, capacities, and this is absolutely essential to maintain the service and the model running. So in short, I just wanted to say, in short, this is Together for Water. Thank you.